In this video, I want to do the same thing that we did with the scoreboard, but for our points. So basically, it's going to function in very much the same manner as the scoreboard. And now that I'm kind of thinking about it, it's probably not a bad idea to take this logic and move it out into the main HUD blueprint, because we're basically going to have a one-for-one of this, but also with our points. So that's something to take into consideration when we go about doing this. Now, currently, we have nothing in our HUD. That's fine. That's actually good. But we have this WBP points. So if we head over to it, let's just open that on up. All it is a simple text block that has the view model set up to just kind of auto get. And we need to change this to be just like the scoreboard entry. So it needs to be the manual type. We need to manually set it based upon the player state, that kind of stuff. So to begin, we need to also kind of make well, we don't need to really make a blueprint to house it. I was thinking of that for a second, but I just changed my mind. We're going to set this from creation type to manual. And from here, we can actually get rid of this function entirely. So remove our get zombies player something something stats. And now we have this that we need to set. Now, following with the scoreboard entry, we want to take in a player state. So player state, and we'll make it instance editable and expose on spawn. And the type is going to be the SKG player state. So this way, when we go to create this blueprint for the points, we have access to the player state. We can determine if the player is locally controlled, which will allow us to adjust our size a little bit, that kind of stuff. Now, back to our WBP HUD. We currently have our points in a vertical box. So we want to take our vertical box, make it a variable, and let's set it to VB underscore. Let's just do points. So over in the graph, let's remove tick and pre-construct. And we want to start carrying over the logic from our scoreboard into our HUD. So let's go ahead and open up our scoreboard here. Go to the graph, and we're going to copy this create unique entry function. So let's paste that in our HUD. Let's go ahead and promote the player state entries to a variable. And we don't have this vertical box here because we're not really adding, so to speak, but we are going to be creating a widget. So we're going to basically be creating a unique entry that we can use to add in, multiple places. So this is not going to add really anything. So we're going to remove the add child to vertical box, but we are going to leave this where we add it to the player state entries. So now we want a return node, and we want to return that widget. So this is for the scoreboard specifically. So actually, I'm kind of getting a little bit off track, I think. So with the unique entry, we are going to need, in this case, a scoreboard, and we are also going to need a points widget. So we're going to have actually two things. So let's go ahead and make it return a scoreboard first. So we'll just drag and drop to add that type. And let's just call it scoreboard or scoreboard entry. So once we have that, let's also just disconnect that too while we're at it. Let's see, it's probably not a bad idea to. Yeah, I think it's going to be cleaner if we put this add beforehand, like that. So we want another create widget, and this one will be our points. Same thing, we have a player state. So let's go ahead and grab our player state. And now we want to drag this also into the return node and name this one to points entry. So now we have a scoreboard entry and a points entry that we are returning. So if we go back to our scoreboard, let's look at the init entries. Let's go ahead and copy this and paste the event in our HUD, go back to the scoreboard and copy this as well. And again, paste it in the HUD. So now, okay, so we have to change this to create unique entry because it returns something, means we can't directly call it anymore. It's unfortunate, but it's not a big deal. And it actually makes sense. So let's go ahead and create a matching event and call it on player state registered. And that'll satisfy it. So now we have our init entries. We just want to call create unique entry and pass in the player state. Likewise, we want to copy this and same thing, pass in the player state. So now we have these two widgets that we need to add to corresponding places. So in the case of the WBP scoreboard, we can just pass it right along. And same thing for the points, we're going to actually add it to our vertical box directly. So the scoreboard, we can actually, probably not the worst idea to do the same thing to the points. We might do it later at some point, but in the scoreboard, let's go ahead and disconnect our event construct so we're not doing anything and make a new custom event. And let's call this one add entry. And we want this to take in a scoreboard entry like so. And all we want to do is just add it to our vertical box. So add child to vertical box, our entry, and that's it. So this can go bye-bye along with this. So we just have that single function. So in WBP HUD, when we create a unique entry, we want to grab our scoreboard and add entry. Like so. So let's just, while we're at it, copy and paste to both locations. And it's probably not a bad idea to merge these in some form or another. So from here, we want to then grab our vertical box for points and again, add child to vertical box and pass in the points entry. And there we go. So lastly, let's go ahead and delete our preset points, compile save, and we can start giving it a try. Okay, so that seems to be fine. We have our text block, and when we have two players, we should have two entries. So we have one, and we have two. Keep forgetting about the spam. So now we just need to set up our WBP points to assign the view model. So let's go ahead and we will just delete all this except for, in our case, the construct. So we're going to grab our player state. We're going to grab our view model, player stats. Just like before, we can then set the view model to be that getter for the player stats. And now we should have our points down here. So we have 1,000 and 1,000. So we had an issue there, which happens every once in a while. So this needs to be resolved at some point. Let's try it again, unless that's a different issue. Yeah, so not exactly sure what makes it happen, but sometimes it's just a little finicky. I don't really know why, but we have our points displayed on both cases. And if I buy the door, you can see it updates to correct itself. So we are going to have to set up logic to fix the values initially, but that's just one of those things we're going to have to more or less deal with. It's not too big of a deal unless I can find some sort of workaround. Basically, we're just not able to, I guess you could say, initialize the values to what they currently are, because I guess it just doesn't broadcast or something like that. But again, it's not really that big of a deal. The main thing being, we have our HUD set up, we have our points down here, we have our scoreboard up here. So we are in a good overall spot. Okay, so with that out of the way, I will see you in the next one where we continue this process and, well, just keep working. If you like what I'm doing and you want to help support me, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below, where you can also get early access to this entire series.